Hello, nitwits, and welcome to Knitting Time with Willie. I've been making this series for about a year and a half at this point, and I'm only now realizing that I definitely should have called it nitpicking. I feel like I probably should have spent a little more time coming up with a name back when I started out. Whatever, I've already made the graphics. It's too late now. I'm your host, Willie Muse, joined as always by my co-host, Nitcolis. And you guys, I am happier than I have been in a very long time. As a lot of you know, I'm currently on a quest to find my own bad movie, and I feel like that quest just got a whole heck of a lot easier because I was just introduced to my new favorite thing in the entire world, a wonderful little place called Tubi. One of my Patreon supporters suggested that I check this thing out, and that little tip was honestly one of the best birthday presents that I have ever received. Well, I guess it wasn't technically a birthday present because my birthday happened solidly 2 months ago at this point, but it feels like a birthday present because I've been thinking a lot about my birthday recently because, well, I'm at an age where I spend a lot of my day dwelling on the passage of time. Anywho, for those of you who haven't yet had your eyes opened, Tubi is a free streaming service that is kind of like if Netflix had no standards about what they put on their platform. As best as I can tell, Tubi's business model is to build out their library by licensing literally any movie they can get their hands on, so long as it's cheap, and as a result, they have ended up amassing the most impressive collection of crazy shit that I have ever seen on the internet. Which is honestly saying something. I am not joking when I say that scrolling through their movies this past weekend felt less like looking for a movie and more like peering into thousands of different alternate universes. Like, I don't know who is making all of these insane films or what their life is like that they thought that doing so would be a good idea, but I would very much like to meet all of them because I am genuinely fascinated by their mere existence. I had the thought, hey, I should make a video about that, no fewer than 40 times while I was searching the depths of Tubi. And at the rate that I put out my videos, that means that I have 20 years worth of content to get through at this moment in time, which I couldn't be more excited about. And while I'm absolutely going to do my best to get to every last bit of insanity I found, there is one movie that simply could not wait. The moment I saw it, I knew that I had to talk about it as soon as I possibly could. And so rather than wasting precious seconds, why don't I just get right down to discussing my new favorite thing to exist on this earth? I'm not even joking. My apologies to my family and friends, but you've been replaced. It's called The Passion, a Brick Movie, and it's perfect. If I have marketed this video properly, and let's be honest, that's a very big if, then you probably already know what this movie is. It's The Passion of the Christ, but it's acted out with Legos. My assumption is that someone noticed the popularity of things like Lego Batman and said hey, you know who the original superhero was, right, kids? And because of that, I was honestly a little bit worried going into the movie because a big part of the charm of the Lego properties is that they're humorous and self-aware, so I thought that there was a chance that this one might also be a parody, but no, it is not. This movie was clearly made by someone who takes the story of Jesus Christ very seriously and wanted to spread said story, but the only way he could think to do so was by reenacting it with a bunch of Legos. Well, bricks. I keep saying Legos, but this is a brick film, which is a very different thing. They make that very clear with their legal disclaimer at the beginning. And right now, some of you might be wondering how a brick movie differs from a Lego movie, and aside from the total lack of fun and humor, I'd say that the biggest distinction there is that unlike Lego movies, brick movies are not animated for the most part. Most of the scenes here are just static images of actual Legos with dialogue added on over top. And while that fact probably means that most people are going to find brick movies way less fun than Lego movies, for me, it actually made things much better, because if at any point during this film's 30-minute runtime I started to lose interest, all I had to do was picture the dude off screen playing with Legos like, "You betrayed me, Judas. I'm sorry, Lord." And I was back on board. Of course, for as much as I love the brick film, there's a reason that Lego movies use CGI, and that's because this style of filmmaking has its fair share of storytelling limitations. And to show you what those limitations are, why don't I just jump ahead to breaking down the film's plot? Although that said, I feel like odds are pretty good that most of you watching this already know what that plot is. It's a pretty famous story. It all begins with a little disclaimer. And from there, we jump right into the actual movie, where we meet the surviving disciples as they lament the death of their Lord. And I've seen this movie twice now, and both times I was aware going into it that I was watching Lego Passion of the Christ, but even with that being the case, I was still not prepared for that jump. This movie takes its subject matter very seriously, which makes sense because it's about a lot of people's favorite dude being brutally tortured and killed, but unfortunately for the filmmakers, that serious tone is a very hard needle to thread when the movie you're making is being enacted by a bunch of children's toys. I kind of feel like that's the whole point of the Lego properties, you know? The people behind them are well aware that having their stories told with toys is gonna make them feel silly, and so they lean into that silliness and end up with these fun parodies that a lot of people really love. But, well, unfortunately, the people behind Passion, a brick film, did not seem to get that memo. I don't believe there to be a single moment of levity here. They play everything completely stone-faced, and as a result, they end up with something that is way funnier than any Batman or Ninjago could ever be. I mean, just look at the first moment of dialogue we get.
What are you going to do?
What can I? He was my life, my hope, and now he's gone.
That is objectively the funniest thing that I have ever seen in my life. This is, for all intents and purposes, one of the biggest all is lost moments in history. That scraggly-haired Luke Skywalker-looking motherfucker is the disciple Peter, and right now he is about as low as any person has ever been. Not only has he seemingly lost his faith in God and humanity after seeing his Messiah friend Jesus brutally tortured to death, but he is also overcome with a great sense of guilt after having denied Jesus 3 times in order to save his own skin. The amount of emotional turmoil that Peter is going through at this moment is unimaginable, and because this movie attempts to convey all that turmoil using nothing but the face of a Lego man, I'm pretty sure that I laughed at this scene for 10 minutes straight. And this, in a nutshell, is what this movie is. It's just 30 minutes of some of the most incongruous, baffling, and frankly sacrilegious filmmaking choices that I have ever seen in my life, so buckle up, because I truly think that this thing is something special. After showing us that low point, the movie then jumps back 3 days earlier in order to show us how we got there. Everything is blue now, and Jesus appears to be peeing behind a rock while chatting it up with his Father in heaven.
Give me strength, Father, to endure. Abba, you are my refuge. You alone are my strength. Father, I put my trust in you.
And you know, I have a lot of problems with the casting choices that they make in this movie, but I think that the biggest issue I have is that the block person they chose to play Jesus is way too cool in a way that doesn't really fit the character. I kind of think of Jesus as a well-meaning know-it-all nerd, you know, like Abraham Lincoln or Brainy Smurf, but here they cast him as a straight-up action movie hero, complete with growly voice and badass facial hair, and it really goes against my own personal headcanon in a way that I did not like. If I didn't know any better, I would almost say that they were trying to make Jesus sexy, which... well, I get it. It makes sense. Jesus is sexy. His crucifixion abs have been filling gay little Catholic boys with shame for hundreds of years now. That said, though, if Jesus is sexy, I think of him as sexy in a sweet, caring himbo sort of way. But here they seem to be going for the gruff, rough around the edges, badass sort of sexy, and it feels like such an odd choice to me. A game I played a lot while watching this movie was trying to guess what Lego set each character was originally from, and my guess for Jesus was that he was a repurposed Snake Plissken from Escape from New York. I mean, I looked it up, and that's not actually the case because Snake Plissken has an eye patch, and the Lego Jesus unfortunately does not, but just know that those are the kinds of vibes that he's giving off. And sadly for the Brick Messiah, an eye patch isn't the only thing separating him from Snake Plissken, because, as it turns out, he's also terrible at escaping from things. That was a terrible transition. He's about to be captured and taken in for crucifixion, is the point that I was trying to make there.
Peter, are you still sleeping? The hour has come, and my betrayer is here.
Clearly, he was not sleeping, Jesus. His eyes were open. You're the all-knowing Son of God. You should know these things. Also, I'm sorry to point this out because you will not be able to unhear it once I do, but whoever was editing this movie clearly spent top dollar on some sick-ass cricket sound effects, and now they're doing their best to get their money's worth in this scene in a way that's... well, it's a little bit grating.
Rabbi.
Judas, is that how you betray me? With a kiss?
Gay.
Am I leading a rebellion that you come against me with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in the temple courts, yet you did not arrest me. But this is the hour when darkness reigns.
Take him away.
Alright, this might be an issue with the source material more than the movie itself, but why does Jesus seem so pissed off at Judas right there? Not only is not getting mad kinda his thing, but I also kind of feel like Judas is doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing right now. Jesus seems to not only be hyper aware of how things are going to play out for him, but also banking on things going exactly as they do. Judas is more or less the reason that Jesus is able to put his master plan into action. So if anything, I feel like he should be thanking his former disciple right now. Like, I get that what he's about to go through is less than pleasant, but taking that out on Judas feels a little bit aggressive in my opinion. Also, I am not a biblical expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't remember Judas being that much of an asshole. Like, maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of thought he felt bad about what he did almost immediately, and that kiss on the cheek was more of an I'm sorry I betrayed you thing than the weird mafioso taunt that it is in this movie. And while we're on the subject of the way that Judas is portrayed, wasn't he supposed to be a redhead? I kind of thought that's why everybody hates redheads, because they betrayed Jesus back in the day. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but even if I am, I still contend that whatever Judas looked like, it definitely wasn't the gothed out dog the bounty hunter that they portray him as here. Also, for the record, I don't personally hate redheads, I just know that historically they have gotten a bad rap, and I kind of thought that was because they were associated with the person who killed Jesus. Please don't any redheads come for me in the comments. Whatever the case may be, Judas tells the Romans where Jesus is, they take him into custody, and one of the disciples has a sword for some reason. I'm not sure if that part was actually in the Bible or not, but if it was, then that's very weird, because I feel like carrying a concealed weapon around goes against a lot of what Jesus and friends stood for. Then again, I guess that if they had spent a little less time preaching love and forgiveness and a little more time practicing their swordsmanship, then their leader wouldn't be on his way to a jail cell right now, so. Before we get to see what happens in that jail cell, though, we're treated to this little interaction.
Psst. It's me, John. Let me in.
Who's that with you?
He's a friend.
You're not one of his disciples, are you?
Woman, I don't know him.
And I will be honest, I have no clue what this scene means or why they included it in the movie. My guess is that this is the first time that Peter denies Jesus, but I say that with 0% certainty because, well, for starters, I'm not even entirely sure that that dude doing the denying was Peter. And that was honestly one of the main problems I had with this movie. I have enough trouble telling characters apart when they're played by human people, so trying to keep track of a bunch of Lego people was kind of a non-starter for me. I would be lying if I said I didn't use a bunch of sketchy Christian websites like they were a Wikipedia plot summary just to understand the basics of what was going on here, and I definitely got at least one virus from doing that, so fingers crossed that this video does well because, well, I'm probably going to need a new computer pretty soon. Also, why is the lady Lego British?
You're not one of his disciples, are you?
My assumption was that the English in this movie was supposed to be a stand-in for, well, whatever language Jesus spoke. Italian, probably. And because of that, it's weird to me that there would be multiple versions of this stand-in language when they're all supposed to be the same language. If that makes sense. I don't know, it happens a lot in movies and it irks me every time because I just feel like there should be some consistency there. I kind of think that what must have happened here is that the story of the Passion is such a sausage fest that they only thought to cast one woman, and so when they got to this scene, they kind of just scrambled and told the actress, I don't care what you do, just make it sound different from Mary Magdalene. Based on this scene, part of me thinks that when we get to the part where Jesus' mother mourns him, we're gonna meet a Virgin Mary with a Jamaican accent, because that's the only other thing that this VO performer has in her back pocket. Although that's probably just wishful thinking on my part. In any case, Jesus has been taken into custody, where Gandalf is making him plead for his freedom.
Who is it that you say you are? The Messiah? The Christ?
I have spoken openly to the world. I've always taught in the synagogues or at the temple where all the Jews come together.
And I will be perfectly honest, I do not have a single clue what Jesus says in his own defense, because the sound mixing in this movie is, well, it's just terrible. Based on the loud groans in this scene, I can only assume that while Jesus is being persecuted, there is also an unrelated zombie apocalypse that is going on in the background.
Why question me? Ask those who have heard me what I say.
How dare you answer the high priest like that?
Like what? I have watched this part 20 times now, and between the murmur of the crowd and Jesus' sexy whisper voice, I have yet to make out a single word that Jesus said. And that's honestly kind of a shame, because it must have been something pretty juicy for him to have gotten bitch slapped like that. But yeah, whatever he said clearly didn't go over well, because after that, the angry mob turns Jesus over to Pontius Pilate for crucifixion, although not before roughing him up one last time. Brutal. Upon seeing his former leader being carted off to what's sure to be a very bloody demise, Judas does a very sharp 180 and starts to regret his decision to turn Jesus in.
What do you want? We paid what was agreed.
I've betrayed innocent blood.
What is that to us?
Take it. I don't want your money.
Okay, I know that this is what happens in the Bible and stuff, but looking at this movie in a vacuum, I find this scene deeply confusing. Like, last time we saw him, not only did Judas not seem like he cared that he had betrayed Jesus, he seemed like he was actively enjoying himself.
Take him away.
So to see him turn so far in the other direction like this is very odd, and in the context of the film, the only explanation I can give for it is that he regrets how much money he got out of the deal, because based on the dinky sound effect they pipe in here, it definitely doesn't seem like it was enough to justify killing God over. Confusing or not though, I'm very happy that Judas has his change of heart, because it leads to what is probably my favorite part of the movie, and there's not a lot that I can say about this, so I'm just going to show it to you and hope that you enjoy it as much as I do. Although that said, depending on your tolerance for terrible depictions of suicide, you might want to pause this video and jump forward to the next chapter right now.
I can't live with what I've done. I can't live with what I've done. The only way out is death. The only way out is death.
Let's just move on. And if you thought that suicide by hanging was as gruesome as you could get in a movie populated by little Lego men, then you'd be wrong, because after Judas does his thing, we cut back to the A story where Jesus is receiving a public flogging at the hands of Roman soldiers.
30 lashes. This should do it.
Not the sticks. He looks tougher than that.
Father, my heart is ready.
Okay, I know this probably shouldn't be my takeaway here, but the grill marks that soldier is getting on Jesus' back are incredible. It's a perfect lattice, which is made all the more impressive when you remember that he is working with very limited arm mobility. Which, speaking of, watching that Lego man work a chain made me realize yet another reason why telling this story with Lego men is the worst idea that anyone has ever had, and that is that the most basic requirement of a passion reenactor is that they have the ability to do this. And Lego men can't really do that. Not gonna lie, I don't really think they thought this movie through. But anyway, after his flogging, Jesus is taken back to Pontius Pilate, who, for some reason, really doesn't want to kill him.
I have brought him out to you to show you that I find no fault with him. Here is the man. What wrong has he done?
For being the guy who murdered the Christian God, Pontius Pilate comes off really well in this Christian movie. He seems very gung-ho about trying to spare Jesus' life in a way that I guess is accurate to the story of the Passion, but still leaves a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth.
Silence! It is your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of the Passover. Do you want me to release to you the King of the Jews?
We want Barabbas.
Give us Barabbas!
We want Barabbas.
What shall I do with this man?
Crucify him!
Crucify him! Crucify him! Crucify him! Crucify him! Give us Barabbas!
I had a lot of fun watching this movie, but getting to this part, I remembered like, oh yeah, this is a Passion play, and those are traditionally very anti-Semitic. And like, I have no problem with the idea of retelling the story of the crucifixion, but I feel like if you're going to do it, you should be aware of the history there and be sensitive to it. But this movie feels like it's going in a very different direction. It jumps through hoops to show us how hard Pontius Pilate tried to spare Jesus' life. Like, we even get a scene of him talking everything over with his wife, General Leia Organa, for some reason.
You condemned him. An innocent man.
I had no choice. It would have meant trouble with Rome, and a possible rebellion here.
Was it right?
No. He was innocent.
Meanwhile, the people of Jerusalem are treated like this angry mob with a thirst for blood. Like, at one point, Jesus more or less just says that it's their fault that he's about to die.
Where do you come from? You won't speak to me. Don't you realize I have the power to set you free, or to crucify you?
You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin.
And maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I can't help but feel like this is all just a wee bit problematic given certain sentiments a lot of assholes have surrounding the death of Jesus. Which, like, for the record, Jesus Christ, I can't believe I have to say this. I hate the internet. But for the record, nobody should be blaming the Jewish people for killing Jesus. For one thing, everyone in this story, save for the Romans, is Jewish. So even if Jesus blames the mob for his death, it's not because of their religious beliefs, because, well, he himself also held those same beliefs. If anything, this is an indictment on mob mentality, which means that Jesus there isn't so much blaming the Jewish people for his death as he is blaming groups of people who come together to place blame on other groups of people for certain things. Which is very ironic. Also, if the mob is to blame, their motivations were probably a lot more complicated than this movie makes them seem. The thing that I was taught was that the whole thing with them choosing to spare Barabbas had less to do with their desire to see Jesus brutally murdered and more to do with their desire to see Roman soldiers brutally murdered. I'm pretty sure that at this point in time, most people in Jerusalem were single-issue voters, and that issue was getting the Romans the fuck out of their town. If I'm remembering correctly, Barabbas was in jail for murdering an occupying soldier, and so the mob saved him because they were like, cool, this dude gets stuff done. Jesus was also fighting against Roman occupation, but he preached non-violent solutions because, Well, he's Jesus, and because of that, I think that people were just fed up with his ways, and so they preferred the guy who got results. And again, I'm not an expert. I'm currently trying to remember things I learned in high school Bible class, so everything I'm saying might be very wrong. But if I recall, what I learned is that a lot of Jesus' teachings make a lot more sense when viewed through the lens of someone trying to practice civil disobedience. Like, there's the thing he said where if someone asks for your cloak, you should give them your tunic as well. And that wasn't so much him saying to be extremely selfless as it was him saying that if a Roman asshole is gonna take your clothes, then you should piss them off by getting naked in front of them as a sign of disrespect. The other thing I remember learning was that when he talked about turning the other cheek, what he meant by other cheek was your butt, and he was essentially saying that if someone slaps you, you should moon them. Which, saying that out loud, I feel like I'm definitely misremembering stuff, because right now I'm making it sound like most of Jesus' teachings revolved around exposing yourself to your enemies, which, well, that doesn't sound right. Still, even if I'm getting the specifics wrong, my larger point still stands, which is that there's a lot of historical context that gets lost, and actually, I don't know why I'm spending so much time trying to explain this. Just don't be anti-Semitic. It's not that hard. And while we're on the topic of things in this movie that left a bad taste in my mouth, I do want to point out that all of the Lego men here are white, and normally I don't think I would call this out except for the fact that Legos are usually yellow, which means that the whitewashing of the story of Jesus was an active choice on the filmmaker's part here, and well, I think that choice was a bad one. But anyway, Jesus is sentenced to crucifixion, and so we finally get the answer to how they're gonna get a Lego man to stretch his arms out. And that answer seems to be breaking them off and hastily hot gluing them back on. As it turns out though, the biggest logistical issue with crucifying a Lego person isn't the arms so much as the hands, because the way they go about driving the nails, it kind of makes it look like Jesus is holding on to them in a way that's very silly to watch.
Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing.
I mean, kind of seems like you don't know what you're doing, dude. Like, I don't know, just let go and run to freedom. But yeah, Jesus is crucified to death while a crowd watches on, and then he comes back to life, and a lot of wars are fought because of it. End of film. Yes, insofar as it was the Lego Passion of the Christ, but that said, as far as Bible stories reenacted with toys are concerned, it was pretty well done. I would never watch this movie in a context that wasn't to mercilessly make fun of it, but to the filmmakers' credit, I do think that they made the best version of this movie that they possibly could have. Well, the sound mixing needed some work, but other than that, if the idea of Lego Passion of the Christ sounds like a good one to you, then you will probably enjoy this movie. I'm not sure that you exist, whoever you are, but if you do, then this movie is a slam dunk. If you can push past the anti-Semitism, then yes it is. I had two main takeaways after watching this movie. The first is that making a Lego Passion of the Christ is the stupidest idea that anyone has ever had, and the second is that, well, it's also kind of brilliant. I did my best to try and rationalize how this movie came into existence, and the answer I came up with was that it was essentially a cash grab. As insane as the movie is, there's a pretty clear market for it, which is Sunday schools and youth groups and anywhere else where adults are trying to scar children into being a Christian. If I had to guess, whoever made this movie saw how much kids reacted to the Lego movies and was like, wow, I could use that to make some money and spread the word of God. And as a result, we ended up with one of the strangest half hours ever set to film. Strange or not, though, it does make sense, because I feel like from solely a business perspective, this movie was a slam dunk. I'd be surprised if whoever made it didn't get a pretty decent chunk of change out of it. And if I'm right in saying that, then, well, that is absolutely absurd. Before I move on, I do want to clear one thing up, and that's that regardless of anything I said here today, I do actually like Jesus quite a bit. I agree with pretty much everything I've ever heard the guy say, and all things considered, he seems like he was a pretty chill dude. And I feel like based on the way I've talked about this movie today, me saying that might surprise a lot of you watching. And if that's the case, then let me just say this. Me making fun of this movie is not the same as me making fun of Jesus. Those are two very different things, and while I can't say this for sure, I feel pretty confident that were he around today, Jesus probably would have had a lot of the same feelings about the Passion, a Brick movie that I do. I have no idea what Jesus was thinking when he was hanging up on that cross, but I feel like it probably wasn't, man, I sure do hope someone finds a way to profit off of this one day. Again, I can't say that for sure, but just based on the stuff I've heard him say, making money never really seemed to be at the top of his list of concerns. If we're being honest, I feel like a strong case could be made that were someone to actively try and disrespect Jesus' legacy, they could not do any better than by making the Passion a Brick movie. Like, I don't know if he was actually omnipotent as many claim, but for his sake, I really hope he wasn't, because I'm pretty sure that if he knew that this is the shit that would come from his sacrifice, that would hurt him way more than a crown of thorns ever could. If you think about it for long enough, nothing about this movie's existence makes a lick of sense, and yet, like I said, it kind of makes a lot of sense to me, and I feel like I'm not the only one. I think that we've all met at least one person who exists in this bizarre nexus where Christianity meets consumerism, and even though those two things really should never cross, we kind of all just accept that they do now. The thing that always blows my mind when I watch Christian media like this is just how sure of itself it is, even when it shouldn't be. They've turned a religion that is very much not about consumerism into a product to be sold, and they seem to be doing so without even a second's thought as to whether or not they're missing the point. And I think that, more than anything, is what bugs me about these sorts of people. They're just so sure that they're right. One thing that I couldn't shake while I was making this video was the thought that the people who made this movie would look at me like I'm the weird one. They're so secure in the weird twisted logic they've built their worldview on that to them, me risking my soul by making fun of an absurd movie about Jesus is way crazier than making said absurd movie about Jesus. Which, to be clear, I am not saying that being a Christian is inherently illogical. I consider myself agnostic, so as far as I'm concerned, believing in some all-knowing creator God makes just as much sense as not believing in some all-knowing creator God. If you think about existence long enough, nothing makes sense to me, so I say believe what you want so long as it helps you get through the day. That said, though, there are a lot of Christians who are illogical. They've been riled up by things like passion plays, and as a result, they've ended up boiling down the Christian religion to something as simple as Jesus died for us, and if you go against him, then you're bad. And in the process of focusing on that, they end up forgetting most of the things that Jesus actually stood for. There are so many money-loving, homophobic, transphobic, anti-Semitic, racist, slut-shaming Christians out in the world today who think that the way they live their lives is honoring anti-materialism, love thy neighbor, exclusively friends with sex workers Jesus, and it makes absolutely no sense to me. Like, one thing that made me giggle the entire time I was watching this movie was the thought that had this story happened today, the sorts of people who would unironically watch the Lego Passion would almost certainly be the people in the crowd screaming, "Crucify him." Like, they certainly don't think that they would be, but a cursory glance at the state of the world is honestly all you'd need to confidently say that, yeah, they definitely would. And that's honestly why stuff like this irks me so much sometimes. Like, normally I would just try to ignore these people's existence and let them stay in their own little world, but unfortunately they refuse to do that. They are so confident in their spurious worldview that they do what they can to infect the rest of us with it in ways that I probably don't even need to go into, because I feel like most of you watching this already know what I'm talking about. And what makes it suck all the worse is that it kinda works. Like, I would be lying if I said there wasn't some part of me deep down wondering if I really am going to end up burning in hell for all eternity just because I have the gall to mock a movie about the Brit crucifixion. Crucibriction. Granted, it's a small part, and I like to think that if he exists, all-knowing God would understand humor and context, but that part of me is there nonetheless. It's hard to hear someone speak confidently about anything and not listen a little, which, well, that honestly really sucks. Because lest you all start calling me a godless heathen in the comments, just know that I don't think it's only evangelical Christians who are like this. It's everyone. Granted, evangelicals are on a whole a little bit more obnoxious about it, but I do think that we all live in our own little worlds with our own little logic, and that logic doesn't always make sense for everyone else. One thing that I couldn't stop thinking about while watching this movie about the death of Jesus was, well, myself. I'm a bit of a narcissist. I have recently entered what's known as my Jesus year, which, for those of you who don't know, means that I am currently the same age that Jesus was when he died. I won't say what age that is because I'm a lady, but if you don't know and you're curious, it's an easy Google. So, watching this movie, ridiculous as it was hard for me not to look at the story of Jesus and be like, wow, he did all that and he was only my age? What the hell am I doing with my life? And honestly, that makes sense because that's the whole idea behind the Jesus year. It's designed to remind everyone that Jesus managed to accomplish everything he wanted by the age of 33 and make you take stock in your own life to the point that if you don't measure up with literal God, then you start to feel bad about yourself. Which, saying it out loud like that, it does start to feel sort of ridiculous, but that doesn't mean that I still don't buy into it on some level. There are so many people with their own ideas about what it means to be certain ages, and even if a lot of those ideas aren't rooted in any logic, that doesn't mean that I haven't internalized them a little bit, because, well, it's hard to hear someone speak confidently about anything and not listen a little. Based on how I've heard people talk about it, I had a lot of conceptions about what it means to be 33. And now that I'm here, I can confidently say that most of those do not apply to me. Like, maybe that's other people's worlds, but it sure as shit isn't mine. Like, I don't really remember what I thought my life would be like at this age, but it sure as hell did not involve me wearing a silly hat while I talked about Lego Jesus. So, the older I get though, the more I think that maybe it's okay that I live in my own world with my own twisted logic, because I think that we all do on some level. In a lot of ways, the Earth we live on isn't all that different from 2B, just a bunch of ridiculous alternate universes to peer into. And even though in the real world you don't have the benefit of a screen to separate you, maybe what we all need to learn how to do is laugh at all that ridiculousness rather than letting it consume us, because at the end of the day, the only thing any of us needs to be is ourselves. I'm not entirely sure if that last joke came across. In case it wasn't clear, when I said to be, I meant it to be spelled like the streaming service that I've been talking about this whole time. I will be honest, I had a very hard time figuring out how to end this video. Whatever. But yeah, that's the episode. I feel like my stream of consciousness might have gotten a little bit more streamy than normal towards the end there, but hopefully you guys had a good time all the same. If you did, then please like, subscribe, share, maybe even consider donating to my Patreon. You'll get access to videos a day or two early, or your name in videos. That's about it. I don't really offer much with my Patreon, but it does help support the show, and if you want to see it keep going and you can help out, then that's the best way to do it. But yeah, I don't have anything else to say, so end of episode. Well, of course, not actually end of episode, because before I go, I need to do everyone's favorite segment, which is Willie posing for thumbnail pictures while his patrons' names scroll up the screen. And for this one, I actually think I know what I want my thumbnail to be. I have a picture of Lego Jesus being crucified, so I want to just be praying to him. Not very good at praying. It's been a while. And I'm pretty sure last time I prayed, it was because I had to lead a prayer at my cross-country camp in high school. And I think the only thing I could think to say was, "Dear Jesus, thanks for everything." Whatever, I can still make this work. So I don't remember which side it is, so I'll do both sides, and that will give my patrons' names time to scroll. So I'm just gonna keep going back. So whichever, I forget which side the crucifixion is oriented towards. Oh, I think I just Sorry, I put my hand over my microphone. Doesn't matter, no one's watching this anyway. So. How do I look? I can't, okay, I don't have very bad eyesight, but I can't see the camera finder very well, so it always looks like I'm blurry, unless I wear my glasses, but if I wear my glasses, then it reflects light, so I'm very nervous that none of this is coming out right now, but I need to figure, so okay, so. Why am I doing that? I feel like this is really just the worst way to end videos. But I guess people have probably clicked out by now if they don't like it. I'm gonna try. Hopefully, I just don't like. Maybe if I do like a straight on one and just go. Do you open your eyes while you're praying? So I feel like. Get it from every angle. It's very late. I'm scrambling to finish this video. Bye.